All right, nothing says happy holidays like a brief discussion on social Darwinism and the concept of race. So, let's cover that topic today. So, we are in the Gilded Age. Things are going well for European Americans, white Anglo Americans, but that's pretty much it. Everybody else is kind of on the outs. And we really start to see a hierarchy formed even more so than there was before, because now we've driven all of the plains tribes and all of the native tribes into near extinction. We have set all these laws and rulings in place that are going to make it so that the white American is on top of the hierarchy. And so, what it means to be on top is that it means you need to be white, Anglo Saxon, Protestant. That is the top of the level, the top of the pyramid, if you will. And then after that, you can be sort of white, which means you're still white, but you're not Anglo Saxon and you're probably not Protestant. That's going to be your next level. And those are typically Irish and multi generational immigrants. So your family came here a few generations ago. You're not old American, you didn't come on the Mayflower or through the Revolution, but you were here longer than this new wave of immigration. Then we have our third tier of whiteness, which is your last white class. And that is going to be Italians, the Eastern European New Wave immigration, and Jewish immigrants. They are still white, but they're the lowest of the white class. And then after we get out of that, we've got people of Asian descent. And then at the very, very bottom, we have formerly enslaved people and, of course, indigenous people. And we use Charles Darwin's concept of animal hierarchy and animal society to apply that to humanity and decide what it means to be fit and adaptable in humanity, which is a false science, but in the 1850s, people buy into it and it is taught as a science across the world, really. And what it does is it puts the white person at the top of the pyramid. And we come up with what's called the hierarchy of race. And there's going to be different ways that you determine it. Now, obviously, you determine it by what religion you are and how presentable your skin color is and where you came from. But then they take it further because it is science at the time, and we're going to use science to prove it. So there's going to be things like head shape that will come into play. The bigger your head, the less close to the top you are. They're also going to take into consideration nose shape, mouth shape. All of these different things that really don't determine anything are going to determine whether or not you are acceptable to be in the white class or if you are lower white. And the biggest problem with all of this, besides the obvious racism behind it, is that the idea behind social Darwinism and the idea behind this hierarchy of race is that your life goal is to get to the top. Because if you think about Charles Darwin and his natural selection, right? The goal is to adapt and survive. You want to evolve into the next highest being you can possibly be in the animal kingdom. That's the only way you survive. And so the theory behind social Darwinism is that you want to evolve into the highest order of mankind that you can be, which happens to be the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant at the top. And your whole life is your evolutionary goal to get to that next step. And that's what the concept of social Darwinism and race is based on, is that there is a top level race that you should be really trying to get to. And the more you evolve out of those lower levels, the better off you'll be in society. And again, of course, they use science to back this up, but it's false science. So there's going to be a lot of things that come along with social Darwinism in the 1850s to the 1900s. Again, systemic racism and all of that stuff. But also, we're going to get the practice of eugenics where because we are basing this concept on the idea that you can evolve and adapt, we are going to try to eliminate genes that are not beneficial. And the way they're going to do that is a lot of times by forced sterilization. So eugenics is this concept that you can really kind of farm your genes, and the stronger and better your genes are, the better quality person you'll get in the next level. So if you are considered one of those lower tiers, your genes are considered to be less desirable, right? And so if you are a criminal, or perhaps just a person of color, or you have a disability, there's a good chance that you will be forcibly sterilized, which means that you will be taken against your will and your reproductive parts will be taken away from you so that you cannot have children. And a lot of times, families will do this to their children, or husbands will do it to their wives, etc. You don't need permission from really anybody. If the state decides that you are unfit to carry on the genes, the states have the right to sterilize you so that your genes and your criminal activities will not be passed down. Now, if we get into the psychology of it all, we know that that's not really how it works. You don't become a criminal because your parents were criminals. It's not a hereditary trait. There are things in life that they are what they are. But this is a very convenient way to prevent non-white people from procreating. And again, if you want to be the best, your goal is to aim to be white. But keep in mind, we also have these anti-miscegenation laws, which means you can't marry outside of your race. So there's really no way that you're ever going to achieve whiteness unless you're already white. And there's a lot of examples of this. You can look at them all online. I'm going to show you some from our book. We could talk about the head shape. If you look at this, we've got different acceptable head shapes here, right? We've got the Greek head shape and what your skull is supposed to look like. Then we've got what they label as the Creole Negro. And then we've got a chimpanzee. And you'll notice the point they're trying to make, that these two head shapes are so similar that they must be less evolved than this head shape, because look at the size of the skull difference. And then, of course, we have all sorts of social sciences that gather on this that just further prove how you are determined to be white or not. So if you look at this, we've got our profile of a Negro, a European, and an Orang Outan. So if you look at that, we've got the profile of the European, the profile of the black person, and then the profile of what I assume is what they're trying to call a chimpanzee. I don't really know what an Orang Outan is, but it looks like it's a former ape-type situation. You'll notice again the point they're trying to make, that obviously this particular face shape is desirable and acceptable. And then we've got grades of intelligence, where the further sloped your forehead is, the less intelligent you are. And then, of course, we've got our women, and we've got our lecture on physiognomy. I don't even know how to say that. Okay, and again, this was a real science. They actually taught this science to people. And you can see how they prevent race mixing. Look at this. We've got our mongrelization, the end of a civilization. If a white person and a black person are going to be in a relationship together, they are destroying civilization. It's titled The Kiss of Death. We've got scientists say the Negro is still in ape stage. So these are things that were common and accepted by society because it gives somebody a position of power over somebody else. And so when you hear things about white privilege and systematic racism and all that stuff, understand how far it goes, because they're going to use the science to fill jails with non-white people, which will then skew the numbers to say, well, see, they must be criminals because there's more of them in jail. But the reason that there's more of them in jail is because they've been targeted for not being white. So We will wrap that little situation up here, and then we'll visit Plessy versus Ferguson tomorrow.